Welcome to Comic Books and You. Today we're going to review Astrobots Issue 1 of 5 from Whatnot and Massive. I'm using a new algorithm tool here to try to help me out with the channel. So you might notice that the title and some of the tags and some of the things are a little bit different than usual. Just trying out new things to try to make the channel grow. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. The usual. Let's get into this series who hooked me in just with the pictures on the cover. I'm a huge mecha nerd, so this is a thing that kind of interested me from the get-go. So we're going to start with the first character that we really are introduced to, which is Consul Atlas, who is the administrator and developer, let's say, of Atlas City, which is supposed to be a colony for humans. He basically set up a bunch of robots. They're building up a city and a colony for humans to come and inhabit. He basically focuses on his mission at all costs, and that might have led him to go a little bit too far a couple of times. Seems like the suppression of a dissent is quite high in the city. So overall, a very nice design as far as a mecha go, especially if you're into Gundam, if you're into Transformers. That's the kind of look that you would expect. Those are not transforming robots, however. Those are very straightforward machines. Our second main character in this particular book would be AP08, which is an Apollo class robot. Those seems to have been more of a construction basic worker machine. He's a relic of an older age. All the other Apollo units seem to have been deactivated. From what I understand, it's because their tasks and their work was done, but there could be all sorts of layers to it. We'll see as the story goes. He's amazingly resilient. He basically crossed an entire giant death zone slash desert to reach Atlas City from another location where he disabled all his function except the walk forward function. So he's got quite a natural resiliency, and even when he gets into a fight in the comic, we see that he's able to withstand far more damage than the normal Astrobot was able to as well. The last thing we're going to introduce as far as a character, just because we see them quite a bit, are the Argus Enforcers type robot. They're the police element of Atlas City. They're just about everywhere. They're well armed, they're well equipped, and they're quite ready to use everything they have in order to bring justice and quiet to the city. There's some designs that have a jetpack, some designs that don't. I think it's an add-on, just like most of their weapons are external as well. So we don't have a whole lot of characters introduced here. We actually have a few others here and there in the book, but none of them are really essential or really key to the story. So it's very nice to have an intro book with just, two characters that are actually important and one general group here that we're going to include all the Argus enforcers in. Going over the story, well, Consul Atlas is addressing all the Astrobots in Atlas City, telling them that their time has come because there's a colony ship that's containing full of humans and people to settle in the city, the Persephone, that's on its way to settle on the planet. The city seems to be fairly relaxed here. We see people. We see robots walking around getting things done, but we still see the Argus enforcers a little bit everywhere. And we get our first good shot at Consul Atlas as well. After his speech, Atlas goes into his command center and starts to talk to a command Argus unit that tells him that there's a protest in progress, trying to get some accountability on the city, trying to get some hidden files revealed, things like this. And Atlas kind of tells the Argus units to take care of it as strenuously as possible. So we get our first taste of the Argus enforcers using non-lethal force, it seems. But then again, they're machines, so is it really lethal or just disabling force? We're not quite sure here. But the robots don't seem to be destroyed from the impacts and events. Atlas retreats to a place called the Roost, where he has a discussion with E10. I'm not sure what model of robot that's supposed to be. We don't have, a full description of all the robots in the book. They have a quick discussion as to the Astrobot crew of the Persephone, which will be Saturnian, no, Scorpios and Venusians. who are genoids rather than standard androids in a way, which might be able to assist them in one of their projects. We're, again, not given too much details. Hopefully, it doesn't end up as a mystery box and it is resolved in the 5 books of the series. While he is having this discussion and trying to reconcile what is going to happen with the arrival of the Persephone, Atlas is warned that a group of rebels have hit a weapon supply cache and are now armed and dangerous. We see a few of the designs we've seen in other places, and one of them seems to be an Argus unit. So we've got a group of rebels that are armed and ready for an uprising before the Persephone would be landing. We don't have much more details than that at this point, but it's enough to give us a potential threat to the stability of the city. Around that same time, Apollo Unit AP-08 comes toward Atlas City from the dead zone, which is basically a giant desert, and his systems come back online as he walks very close to the city gate. The Argus robots that are in keeping the gate let him in after an answer from their command unit. But when Apollo 08 asks them to lead them to the leader of Atlas City so he can have a talk to them, the Argus, as usual, get a little bit overzealous and perform a small amount of police brutality. Unfortunately for them, AP-08 is extremely resilient. He beats a few of them up using their own weapons and just fighting them. So it is a more or less of a futile attempt. People start cheering for Apollo, and the people start to clamor for his name. And Consul Atlas contacts him after he is finally informed of AP-08's arrival, telling them that he wants to meet with them, while the Argus come together to provide him an escort. Seems to be a heavily armed one, but still. So it's a fairly quick story. It doesn't seem like much is happening, but a lot of threads are introduced that are going to be used over the next 5 books. So I've already ordered the entire series. I have a few of them that should be coming in this week. We'll see when we review them. It's an interesting setup. I don't know if it's going to have an interesting payoff, but it's moving in the right direction, in my opinion. Now we're going to get to a weird complaint that I have about this book. It's the fact that there's 15 covers plus a sketch cover. As the book that I have right in front of me here says, Sky Mortimer, uh, or in French, Ciel. It is insane. This is an insane amount of covers for this book. I have 2 of them because I decided that I kind of wanted 2 of them. The standard cover that we have here is pretty cool. You've got your classic orange and blue contrast. It works. That's why it's being used. It hasn't been used as much recently because a lot of people made fun of it. I think a lot of marketers have stopped using that basic contrast. It's a contrast that's really good and it really works. It gives us here a sense of heaven and hell, basically. We've got our spaceship in the back. We've got Apollo in really in the back and Atlas in the front. So it's a very good cover. Doesn't tell us a whole lot about the story, but it introduces the characters and introduces one of the main element, which is the incoming spaceship. Perfectly workable, in my opinion. The second cover that I have is probably one of the rarest one I own, as it is one of those more limited edition cover. It's a toy blister cover with the Apollo unit. I'm not a super huge fan of toy blister covers personally. At least for this, there isn't really a toy line. Okay, they're working on one. We'll talk about that later. There isn't really a toy line, so this is the kind of thing that is cute and fancy, but it's not essential. When you have toy blisters for covers for like gargoyles, transformers, and things like that, I feel it's very lame because those toy blisters did exist back in the days. And often enough, the toy blister cover is much better than the toy we ended up having, which is pretty sad. They're pretty cool, but at $10 per cover, those are expensive covers overall. Not worth getting with this particular level of quality. We'll talk about the level of quality later. After that, well, we've got 13 covers. 8 are exclusive, then there's 5 more, and That's just way too much. They are pretty cool overall. They're Apollo in a combat pose, a blueprint of an Apollo model, Apollo's face with the city in the background. So those are pretty cool, yeah. But overall, they're not great. None of them are really great covered. There would be good art to have included in the book and things like that, but none of them are really fantastic covers. In the second batch of covers I've got here, they're a little bit better. This here is a bit of a superhero pose. That's more decent, but not something I would put on a first issue. Maybe on a second run or the volume 3, whatever, that would work if Apollo stays the main character. But on a first issue, maybe not. This one here with a gun and everything, pretty cool. Once again, in the same family as our action pose we added, the first one of those extra covers. This one here, however, is really cool. Really Atlas in the back, Apollo in the front. The other, there's a E08 and one of the Genoid, I think it was our Venusians as they called them. This one is really cool in woodwork as an issue 1 cover, but I think that's in like a 1 in 50 cover, something like that, so it's freakishly expensive. And then you have all of your exclusive covers for exclusive stores, including one for the web store. That is way too much. When you think that you're paying 250, let's say 250 to 500. I've looked at recent rates for covers. People are not paying what they should be for covers, especially the major indies. Let's say IDW, Boom, Dynamite, 250 per cover. Uh, it's not super expensive, but you're still wasting resources here. You could have maybe 2 or 3 covers. That would be more than enough. Take the rest of the cash you would have put on those covers. Pay your artist, your writer, your inker, your colorist, everybody a little bit better. Just a step up. $5 more, something like that. It doesn't look like much, but it adds up really quickly over the course of, well, even 5 issues. If you get $5 more per page, well, that's a good chunk. If you did get to 25 issues, you would be in heaven with an extra $5 per page. It doesn't look like much, but it could be. And like I said, most of those extra covers are not that fantastic. They're cool, but they're not worth the money you're putting into them. Then you've got the idea of the sketch cover. I think the sketch cover is one of the laziest thing I've ever seen. I've started seeing that as I got back into comics. I mean, if I wanted to draw my own Astrobots, I'd take a piece of paper and I'd draw an Astrobot. I wouldn't draw it on my own book. Would some people maybe enjoy them? Maybe. But I can't see anybody really wanting to buy a blank cover, especially when you have 16 other covers you can get through. If there anybody really likes those sketch covers, tell me, okay? And we'll talk about it because I want to know whoever is interested in that. Whatnot is doing the same as other smaller publishers in that particular floppy category. We had Scout Comics that we had talked about earlier, which I had to delete the video for. But still, they use the same quality of paper for the cover and the interior pages, and it's all very decent quality paper. So gloss, decent binding, decent quality paper. It doesn't tear, it doesn't rip. It's pretty decent overall. And as I said here, the binding for this one is actually pretty good, even if it's a standard 2 staple kind of thing. It does feel fairly sturdy. In my opinion, this is what should be standard whenever you're dealing with comics. From DC, from Marvel, from Boom, from IDW, from Image, everybody should be using this particular level of quality of paper and everything. Order a ton of it, it's not going to get that much more expensive. What I don't like is all those extra covers. They use the same type of paper as the regular cover, so we don't have a cardboard or a cardboard stock cover. Personally, the best world here would be cardboard stock cover with the interior being those glossy pages. That would be the best we can ask for in floppies. If we wanted to go to step up, we need an actual binding. That would get the price of each book to be extravagant. There's not really any ads in the book either. That's really nice Personally, I like that. We do have an ad for an Apollo action figure, which doesn't seem to exist yet. I haven't found it anywhere. Building your own toy line is a nightmare and is really expensive. So honestly, I'm not sure if it was a great investment by Whatnot and Massive to do those unless Astrobot becomes one of their staple series going forward. We get a page interview with Simon Furman, which is the author of the book, who's also worked on other Robot Central series in the past. It's a pretty good introduction telling us where he comes from and what he likes to do building worlds and things like that. What it's missing is the I'm really grateful to be writing this story and I hope you really like it section. There's a section with the we're very excited that you're joining us and moving forward, but I'm not sure this is enough for the story itself. We do get a 9-page showcase of all the covers. That's where I got all of the cover pictures you saw. I got them from the comic. None of them were taken online. It's pretty nice to have them at the end of the issue, but then we're at a point where, well, why are we buying those extra covers? All right, let's go through artistic merits here. First and foremost, of course, we're going to have to go through the mechanical designs, and they're pretty great overall. All the Astrobots look functional. Some of them have built-in heavy construction equipment. The Argus unit look functional for the roles. The Apollo unit looks reliable. That's the most important thing I think about him. He looks like he's able to work quite a bit. All of them have what they need overall. Atlas looks a little bit overwrought a little bit, but it still works for what it needs to be. There's a few vehicles we see, like the weird APCs, the Argus units drive in. That one is perfectly functional. It could have a bit of more work on it, but it still works fairly well. All the robots have a very, let's say, 1990s anime style to them. Very inspired by Transformer or probably the Yuusha series, if you know about that one as well. They're realistic robots overall with a human face and a human expression. They're not mechas like in, let's say, Gundam or Macross. It's that really robotic, sentient being kind of thing. Atlas is larger, more imposing than all the other bots, which is perfectly fine here. That fits his role as the administrator, as the head of the entire government. Gives him a commanding look over everyone. Not sure it would be required for a machine, but as a human reading and as a person looking at the story, it's great that he looks like he's in charge because of the size of him. As I said, Apollo looks simpler, rougher than the other units, and it's a great design overall, especially for that lone wanderer kind of look that he's supposed to have. He doesn't have that cape, or it doesn't look super preponderant on him, but when he has it and on the various pages where we see him with it, it looks pretty darn good. I'm always confused whenever we deal with Genoids as well. Not because I don't like them. The designs work and they're cool looking when you look at all the different places where you can see them. Fantasy Star Online, as an example, has quite a few Genoid style robots. But I'm not sure why you would put sexual features on a machine, make them more feminine. Not sure if there's a real advantage to it. I'm just too practical, I guess. I'm looking at my mecha from a Battletech Gundam Macross perspective. The machines have to be practical, capable of doing their work, fighting if required. Robot boobs, not super essential to me, basically. The Persephone spaceship is also really good looking. It's a simple mechanical design, easy to draw, easy to replicate, so that's very good for the artist compared to, let's say, what we've once seen while we were looking at some Milestone comics where we had an overwrought spaceship, which would have been absolutely impossible to replicate pages to pages. It's one of those designs that works, that has not been maybe done to death. It's hard to do a new or a brand new spaceship design. I've tried doing it myself a little bit in mechanical design. It has its advantages and its inconvenience in a way, but this particular design looks perfectly fine in my book. Background work is also pretty great overall. We've got a decent skyline. It's better than what we've seen in some other comics as well. Maybe not as good as what you can maybe get in Bob Moran or some of those pulp Franco-Belgian comics where you might not have as much details in there. The factory where the Astrobots are built at the top here, we get really nice details on there, and it's really well worked. Denotes a very good attention to detail by the artist, so we know he can do it. And there's always really something in the background. You very rarely have those flat backgrounds or just gradient backgrounds in there. You always have a little bit of something, some lines from a street, some building in the back, just enough there, enough for us to have a little bit of attention to it. And so while we look at the front with the Astrobots doing what they're doing, we have a living background in the back, which works. So that's a pretty impressive work. Panel work is functional. I won't say there's anything fancy in there. The panel are set up easily for us to follow the story, and there's nothing unusual in them. It's not imaginative in any way, shape, or form either. It's not going to revolutionize anything. Nothing out of the ordinary here, but nothing that breaks the comic either, which is usually enough to give it a passing grade. As far as story element goes, there's Greco-Roman references everywhere. Argus is one of the guard dogs of hell. Atlas, Apollo, Venusian, etc. Everything is based on Greco-Roman literature and mythology. It works for what it does, but honestly, I would like some of those sci-fi shows and sci-fi series to use stuff that's outside of the ordinary. The Aztec mythology, Loas from the Hoodoo slash Voodoo, Chinese mythology. I mean, it's used a lot in China, but around here it's not used as much. So a little bit of a mix up would be fun. It's understandable that everything follows the same rules, but I'm not a huge fan of it just because it feels kind of lazy. The basic concept of sending sentient robot to build yourself a colony before you land is not a bad idea. Overall, I think that's not a bad idea, but I do have a few issues with what is represented in these stories. First off, why did you make them sentient enough to need weapon, guards, and even all-out wars? Unless you expect the world you're terraforming to have tons of hostile fauna and even maybe hostile flora, maybe evil carnivorous plants, you don't need them to be armed normally. What you need is a bunch of robots to land and build stuff, dig up minerals, and build upward. So why would you need them to be equipped for war or even have in their precepts as a machine something that would lead them to fight? It makes no sense as a design element. Another design element that I find a little bit weird, well, why are you sending the bots first and then the colonists? Send the whole package, put everybody in hypersleep, let the humans sleep while the robots build. Once it's done, wake everybody up. Anyways, that's pretty much what we have here. The humans in the spaceship are in hypersleep and they'll need guidance in order to be able to get back into doing their regular work. Another thing you could do, send the robots with tons of genetics material, land, build the stuff up. Once everything's built, you get iron wombs going like in Battletech, produce a few babies like that while you have a series of robots that exist to raise the children in an appropriate way. Maybe get rid of that aggression in humanity. So there's a few things that I just find weird here, but it's not bad story elements. It's just how this story is set up is now how I would see it as a, let's say, sci-fi enthusiast. In this story, the rebellion is always or almost always the good guys. So I have a feeling that Consular Atlas is going to get what's coming to him, but I do feel that he is in the right here. Their job is to build a colony for human. Why are people rebelling and why are people asking for people need to know the secret of whatever? I mean, in the end, does it help the humans that are going to start settling on this planet? If it doesn't, as a machine, you shouldn't have these thoughts in a way. Luckily, the reason why there's a rebellion, they want accountability from the government, they want to know the truth as to what happened in the past, is a very easy thing to connect. We want that right now in our governments. So it's an easy message to have and an easy message to bring over. So this is not something that's a real problem. And as a reader, you're going to be easily able to connect to that rebellion because they're doing something that you would want to do anyways. As usual, we're going to talk about the police. And once again, the police are a bunch of jerks in this story. Even in a story about robots building a space colony somewhere, the police managed to end up being the bad guys. One day I would like to have a comic where the police are good guys. It would be really nice. Another thing we have is a line from Consul Atlas in there where he says, "Gaze in wonder at what we have built." And that does have a very Ozymandias kind of feel to it. You should never praise what you've built until it has been built and stays for an extremely long period of time, because sometimes everything you've built just fades away. Pacing in this is kind of weird because this is a 5 issues series, not a 6 issues series, and it doesn't feel like a whole lot happens in the first book, even though quite a lot does happen. So it's really well made and well paced, but in a weird way. We've got our setup at the start, giving us this is how the what the world is, this is what the world is going on in it, and we get what we need to understand our basic characters, Atlas, and the city he is trying to build. We have the section where we get that protest with the rebels and a few details related to that when they steal the weapons. So we get an antagonist or a direct antagonist to Atlas and details as to why they could be a threat. Finally, you've got AP-08 that reaches the town and gets aggressively intercepted and is brought over to Atlas, who wants to meet with him. While not a whole lot is going on, we've got enough that we understand who our characters are and where they're going. And the other thing we get is just enough world building that we understand what the stakes are for all of the characters. Overall, I think it's a very well paced book because it doesn't feel long at all, and I was wanting more at the end of it. Final thoughts? Well, 5 issues is short for a series, and most limited series you see nowadays is 6 issues. Luckily, every once in a while, you'll end up with one that has 12 issues. Wildcats was originally supposed to be 12 issues, but I think they've set it up as an ongoing now. I would like it to go longer. I would like it to be reused into something else, maybe Astrobots Season 2, Astrobots Unite, or whatever, a second book series once it's done. Because the designs themselves are really good and the idea behind it I really like. Whatnot and Massive have a decent number of books in production right now. They're a bit all over the place. There's a bit of romance, some superhero, some mecha, a little bit of everything. And even like, I think we saw Concrete Jungle, which is a supernatural horror kind of thing. Like a lot of those smallish publisher, I would move away from the floppy market and go into the French bande dessinée style market. Not full on graphic novel 300 pages long, but those 44 to 46 pages larger books. Or maybe if you go with the same page format as a floppy, 64 pages floppy to once every quarter instead of once every month. You've got more material in a single book. People are buying more books over time, and you get a bigger profit. You make them a little bit higher quality so you can sell them a little bit higher. I think it would be a better market in a way. I'm really interested in seeing where this goes, especially if the toy line ever materializes. I would be interested in getting some of those toys. If they're at a decent ish price, McFarlane or a little bit higher price, sure. If they get in the $100 range, probably not. That's a little bit of an issue, but this is a thing that I really enjoy reading. I would recommend this series to anybody who likes Transformers, the old Yuusha series, mecha style series, Fantasy Star. There's quite a few things that you can get to enjoy, and it could be something, if all goes well, let's say, which could move in the future as well. There's nothing in there that kids can't enjoy as well. So I thank you very much for listening to me today. I hope you guys have a very nice rest of your day. Keep on reading comics, keep on enjoying them. I'll keep analyzing them, and I'll see you guys later. Bye bye.